I'm pretty convinced at this point that all of nutrition science is complete bullshit. Because like if you think about it, obviously you've been carnivore. I went carnivore for like a straight year after meeting Paul and everything. But I was thinking about the other day, man. I'm like, we didn't even know what vitamins were till like 1912. We couldn't look at cells under a microscope till the 70s, right? So if we go back and say the healthiest version of humans was 11,000 years ago, prior to the advent of agriculture. And virtually all the nutrition science we have was actually done post year 2000, like all the meaningful studies. So we've only ever studied the sickest version of the human species ever. So it's like, not only do we not know what healthy body fat percentage is, we don't know what fat adapted metabolisms look like in nutrition studies. So it's like, is all of this useless? And obviously we got calories in, calories out. All this stuff is just coming up as meaningless nonsense almost. You know what I mean?
It makes you question all of it, period, across the
Yeah.
board, not just nutrition. I mean, imagine, having people from several hundred years ago say, "Hey, what you got?"
Yeah.
And we would be like, I don't know what would we be able to tell them. Maybe some advancements that we found through space, maybe some advancements we found through the sea and digging into the earth. And hey, we were able to get somebody to the moon, and we might have a couple of things, but usually the things that we'd be able to show them would be like materialistic physical things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at this beautiful home I was able to build, and look at this automobile I was able to build that got faster transportation. We have better communication that helps us to learn a lot faster, that kind of has made us cybernetic organisms in a way.
Yeah.
So there are some advancements that are definitely crucial and critical, but uh, they'd say, "Hey, what'd you find out about nutrition?" They'd say, and you'd say, "Well, it turns out that if you have too much body fat on you, it could be really detrimental." And they would be like, "Yeah, no shit."
You're right.
They
Exactly.
have known that forever. And imagine if you had the ability to be overweight, several thousand years ago, if you had the ability to have a surplus of food over everybody, and you
Mm.
were king, or you could kind of just order people around to get you food, and you didn't have to get to food. That could be a major disadvantage if people turned on you and you had to try to figure out a way to get your own food and hunt and things like that. And you could
Yeah.
potentially, die from those things. So I think, you look at like, science as a whole. I think the interesting thing is, with all the different things that are going on, I think that it'd be really cool for everyone to take a breath, pause for a second. I actually think that the quarantine in some way, slowing people down, I do think that it did lead to a lot of disastrous things, but I do think that it has allowed us to go back and maybe audit the way things that are going, the way things are, and
Yeah.
to investigate. Racism is a major problem. Like, let's investigate that. Let's look at that. Police brutality is a major problem. Let's look at that. Let's investigate that. Infectious disease could be a major problem. Health in general could be a major problem. Let's like audit some of these things. But I think, slowing things down, take a breath for a second, and just realize the only thing we've ever really had as human beings, I guess, is maybe two things. We got each other. As
Mm.
long as there's some other people around, having each other is great, because having two heads is better than one.
Yeah.
And being all in the fight, in this quote unquote fight together of survival, is the way to do it, because for the species to continue to pass on, we need more than one. We need more than one human. It's going to take more than just one of us. But also, the other thing is, the only thing we've ever had any sort of control over, the only thing we've ever really had, before COVID-19, after COVID-19, is just being able to think about our thoughts. Just
Mm.
being able to be like mindful of stuff, and be able to that way you're not so reactionary. You're not just popping off at the mouth from every little single thing that happens. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of, and I'm guilty. I can admit to my flaws and failures. I'm guilty as well, because sometimes when you hear something and it goes against a form of belief, whether it be nutrition or religion or race or anything like that, you tend to be like, no, that's not right. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you have to be right. And that's where we really run into problems. So I think, some of the information being shared by some of the people in the in industry, some of the people that have podcasts and things like that, Joe Rogan and some others, where they're having guests on that are telling you that you can control, like you don't have total control over the thoughts that enter your head. Random stuff pops in there all the time,
Sure.
but you do have the ability to think about your thoughts, and you can kind of have them go through a filtering system, and you
Hmm.
can get more educated, and then you can make statements that are cleaner and more clear. I know
Yeah.
for yourself, I think you're in the same category as me. I'm not a huge fan of calories, but at the same time, I recognize that the amount of food that people consume is problematic, and that it
Hmm.
is one of the factors. And I think just to look at stuff rationally, yes, if everyone's on a carnivore diet, the calories probably don't really matter, because they'll end up sort of taking care of themselves, and it won't really be a problem anymore.
Yeah.
But all we can ever really work towards, whether it's no matter what we're talking about in life, is having smaller problems, or have our problems be less than what they used to be.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's in like the biggest epidemic we have right now. We talk about it like obviously there's a chronic disease epidemic, obesity epidemic, all that. I think the biggest epidemic, man, is a lack of critical thinking. And particularly with like the cancel culture stuff, because man, I think about it, man, like I literally own a nutrition company that's based on the foundations of paleo. I remember when I was first introduced to paleo by a girl I was dating at the time, and I was, bodybuilding 6 days a week, and I had a trainer, and I was eating brown rice and tilapia 5 times a day. And like this girl brought me this. It was actually she showed me the 4 Hour Body by Tim Ferriss, and then told me about paleo, and I was like, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was like so like mean about it, just like, no, I know what I'm doing. But dude, I was training 6 days a week, and I was 28% body fat and could not get leaner, like doing everything the trainers told me to do. But now it's like, it's so beautiful that I changed my mind. I was probably, 22 or 23 then or something like that. I'm 34 now. But that's the big problem that I see is we're almost not allowed to change our minds anymore. And it's like I've gotten attacked like crazy for just like, it's so easy to call guys like me or Saladino or Rob Wolf. It's just like, they're a quack, they're a quack, they're a quack, because everyone jumps to science. And this, well, the science is decided. I'm like, no, it's not even close to decided. And if you think it's decided, then we can't move on. We can't get anywhere beyond this, you know?
There couldn't be any more. There couldn't be any more pseudoscience than in nutrition. I
Yeah.
mean, there couldn't be any more, like you talk about fake news. Um, we know certain things, and we've learned certain things, but you can't just partition out things from mice, and you can't just partition
Mm-hmm.
out things, studies done on you can't really partition out anything, because the studies that have been done on humans, a lot of times you got to factor in, like, who are these humans, who, like, what, and then sometimes it doesn't always particularly mean something towards, one group. I mean, we have learned some pretty critical stuff. We have learned that insulin resistance uh, seems to be linked to about 70%, or at least seems to be a causal effect of approximately 70%. The direct link, harder to prove, but it seems to be 70% of deaths seem to come from, some form of insulin resistance. So you end up
Yeah.
with heart disease, cancer. Even cancer has been linked to, uh, some types of nutrition may partake in helping you uh, to not grow cancer cells. Things of
Mm-hmm.
that nature. But people get offended by any of it, because then it puts the responsibility on them, and they get pissed off, and they're like, my daughter or my son or my, and it's it's understandable, because we don't have all the information yet. We need to
Right.
continue to gather information. But yeah, the nutritional science and the studies and the stuff, I think it's good to utilize them in collaboration with real world information. And that's how we end up with guys like Dr. Atkins. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we end up with people with kind of like monumental information that helps change the globe forever.